Thank you all so much for your patience. We're going to go ahead and start our pre-arrival webinar. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be joining us from today. My name is Karina Ivanyan. I'm an intake advisor here at the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO. And ISPO is one of the 4 units in the Global Initiatives Department, which includes the International Faculty and Scholar Office, Study Abroad, and Office of the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Global Initiatives. And today we will be discussing first steps for international graduate students. The International Students and Programs Office, as well as the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs, would like to congratulate you on your acceptance to UC San Diego. We're here to assist you throughout your stay in the United States, as well as provide services to enhance the quality of your experience and contribute to your academic success at UC San Diego. As I mentioned before, my name is Karina Ivanyan, and I'm an intake advisor at the International Students and Programs Office. And today I'm joined by my colleagues, and I'll pass it over to them to introduce themselves as well.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Gabi Hoffman. I am the Assistant Director of International Student Experience and Engagement here at ISPO. I'll go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Shauna.
Hello, everyone. So happy to see you. Can't wait to have you all be on campus and join our graduate community. My name is Shauna Slabiota. I use pronouns she and hers, and I'm a student services advisor in the Division of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Affairs.
Thank you both. Today, a little bit about our agenda. We're going to talk about some important topics that relate to your pre-arrival preparations for coming to UC San Diego. This is a brief webinar designed to give you an overview of basic information in terms of deadlines and important information that relates to your preparations for coming to UC San Diego. Some of the things we will be covering today will be the International Students and Programs Office, as well as graduate admissions reminders. We'll briefly touch on applying for your I-20 or DS 2019, which you'll use to get your student visa. And then we'll touch on approaching deadlines and reminders, as well as upcoming webinars and additional resources. The bulk of our time today will be dedicated to questions and answers. We want to make sure we get all of your questions answered. So a big part of our time together today will be dedicated to that. In terms of a few housekeeping things for our webinar today, you are in listen-only mode, which means you can hear us, but we can't hear you. And this is where the Q&A feature on your screens is really important. So this is going to be the primary way in which we're going to collect questions. In the case where we don't get to your question today, please make sure to send us an email by going to icontact.ucsd.edu. And one of our advisors will be able to connect with you after the webinar to get your questions answered. And lastly, we are recording. So you will be able to view this webinar recording at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. It usually takes us about 2 weeks to get these webinars ready, but once it's available, it will be ready for you to watch on inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. And then just a little bit more about that Q&A feature on your screens. So you can type in your questions there, and then you can send them in either anonymously or not. And then one of our presenters will type the response, or we'll also set aside some questions to answer live at the end of the webinar. And with that, we're going to get started. I'll pass it over to Gabi.
Thank you so much, Karina. So a little bit about who we are. Who is the International Students and Programs Office? Well, as Karina mentioned, it's one of our 3 main offices within our Global Initiatives Division at UC San Diego. ISPO specifically, we are your one-stop shop for any service or program that is geared specifically toward international students. So for example, ISPO provides immigration advising as well as non-immigration advising on various different topics that will help you understand how to navigate your program and succeed at UC San Diego. We have many staff here on hand to support you, 20 professional staff, as well as 15 student staff, some of whom are international students themselves. So really understand the student experience and are here to support you along the way. And a little bit about what we do. So again, our team really specializes in guiding our students, our international students, and helping them meet their academic and personal goals, have a successful transition to campus and student life, and ensure they have meaningful engagement with the university and local community. Although we are the office, as many of us know, as the visa office, right? We help issue your visa documents to come here. We are much more than that. We are here to support you in this entire journey while you're here at UC San Diego. A little bit about who our students are to give you some background information. So let's take a look at our fall 2021 snapshot. We are currently working on the 2022 snapshot, but give you an idea about what our numbers look like. At UC San Diego, we have nearly 9,000 international students enrolled. So in addition to those 9,000 students, there are about 2,000 students who are on post-graduation employment status known as either optional practical training, OPT, or academic training known as AT. Each one of our students makes a significant contribution to UC San Diego's research and educational endeavors. And again, ISPO is here to help support this population through our services, including presentations like this one today. So let's go ahead and get started on some of our more welcoming messages and next steps. So ISPO, along with the entire campus community, we would like to offer you a heartfelt welcome to campus. Though we know the last few years have been tumultuous ones for many people across the globe, we are very excited that UC San Diego has really come back to in-person teaching and instruction and has been thriving. And we are so excited to welcome you in person to campus. You can see a few of the photos here of our orientation sessions that we've had this last fall. So we are very, very eager to welcome you, make sure that this community, this Triton community, is yours from the very beginning. We want you to find your niche here. We want you to feel comfortable here. We want you to think of ISPO as your home away from home, where you can meet others from around the world, learn from one another, explore your interests, and again, above all, feel comfortable here. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of our details here. First steps checklist. I'm going to lead off here with a few reminders first from my colleague, Shauna.
Thank you, Gabi and Karina. So as I mentioned, I work in graduate education and postdoctoral affairs. We often call ourselves GEPA, and graduate admissions is a part of our office. So I'm here to provide some reminders from our graduate admissions colleagues regarding your admission. So you can log into your application account at connect.grad.ucsd.edu. I am also going to put a link in the chat to the application portal. And once you're in there, be sure to check to see if the statement of legal residence form is listed as a to-do item. So this is really key because this form is not required for all programs. So if you need to know if it is required, please check your portal and check your to-do items to see if it's there. Additionally, I want to mention that most students are provisionally admitted at this time. And what this means is that you have to submit some additional documents to finalize your admission. Usually this is something like an official transcript or a record that you've completed your undergraduate degree or a master's degree, whatever degrees you've already completed, and that you need to submit those to our office. If you have any questions about pending admissions documents, please reach out to our staff using the gradadmissions@ucsd email address, and they can help answer your questions. And in this next slide, thank you, this is a screenshot of what the application portal will look like when you log in. So you can see on the left side of the screen forms. You can see here that it says, please complete the following forms, and the statement of legal residence is listed there. Under where it says pending admissions documents, that's where the documents that we need to have from you would be listed. So please double check that. And I also want to call your attention to the highlighted portion of the screen where it says admitted students, and then it has it broken down into things to do immediately, before you arrive on campus, when you arrive on campus, international students. These are links to the admitted students section of our website, and there's a list of items there that we're going to ask you to complete as a newly admitted graduate student. So just be aware of these items, and if you have any questions, please let us know. Again, the email is gradadmissions@ucsd.edu. And I'll pass it back to Karina and Gabi.
Thank you, Shauna. So in addition to those important steps within your grad application, I also wanted to direct your attention to resources specifically for international graduate students in terms of getting started with your visa document requests and other important items to get started here at UC San Diego. I highly recommend that you bookmark the inewstudent.ucsd.edu site. This is a really important site that has specific information you can see here for each degree level of students who come to UC San Diego. So you'll see there, if you click on graduate students, it will take you to these main 3 steps, 1, 2, and 3. The first one talks about how to request your documents from ISPO, and we'll go through that in a little bit more detail momentarily. It will go through multiple steps on how to prepare for your arrival. So this is including everything for how to set up certain accounts, to how to visit some of our important guides to help you get started at UC San Diego, get acclimated to UC San Diego, and then steps to review upon arrival, such as check-in and so forth when you get to UC San Diego. So this is a really nice checklist system that, again, I highly recommend you visit because it is specifically geared toward international students to ensure they're meeting all of their items, their checklist items, before they come to campus. All right, so now we're going to go over just an overview on how to apply for your US visa. This is applicable to both F1 as well as J1 students. So for students who are applying for the F1 visa or the J1 visa, you do need to have either a Form I-20 or Form DS-2019, that's for the J1, in order to apply for your visa. Even if you are a transfer student, let's say you've done your undergraduate program or another graduate program in the United States and have an existing I-20 or DS-2019, you still need to obtain one of these forms from UC San Diego in order to have valid status here. So beginning on March 1st, last week, you are able to request your Form I-20 or DS-2019 via the iPortal at iportal.ucsd.edu. Now, it's important that before you try to access the iPortal, that you have set up your account so that you have a PID and that you are able to log in to your single sign-on account. If you refer to the inewstudent.ucsd.edu site that Karina put in the chat, this will provide detailed information on how to set up that account. There is sometimes a lag time, a bit of wait time between when you have accepted admission and when you are able to set up that account. That can be up to 72 hours. So don't worry if you can't immediately access the iPortal. There is time. You just usually need to wait a couple of days before you can get that access for all the systems to sync. So once you have applied for your documents, and that is outlined again on our website, what documents are required, the form itself will walk you through exactly what documents are needed to upload. Then you will be able to book your visa appointment at your local US embassy or consulate to obtain your visa stamp in your passport. So again, here's the iPortal address, iportal.ucsd.edu. Once you have access to your student systems, you will log in. You'll be asked to upload a copy of the biographical page of your passport, as well as financial support documents. Typically for graduate students, depending on the type of program you're in, whether it is a self-funded program or you are receiving funding from your department, you can upload the corresponding documentation. So for example, if your program is primarily self-support, self-funding, you'll need to show funding from yourself, from your family, personal funds, right? Bank statements. So that is what we would be looking for. And this is outlined in the iPortal, the specifics of what you would need to upload. If you are receiving, for example, funding in the form of a TA-ship or research, a GSR, or other types of funding from your department, and they have spelled this out in a support letter, then you would upload that letter to the iPortal, as long as it meets the minimum requirements for funding for your I-20 or DS 2019. Now, the minimum funding requirements, so that you are all aware, is listed on inewstudent.ucsd.edu. This will take you to the page that explains what specific funding is required for your particular program. It will also tell you how long you need to show that funding for. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pop in the chat the direct link, although you can access it from the iNewStudent page. Here are the funding amounts that we are looking for graduate students specifically. And then it also covers what documentation is accepted versus what is not accepted in order to issue your I-20 or your DS 2019. Okay, so once you have uploaded your documents, the International Students and Programs Office will issue your visa documents within 15 days. We have a very quick turnaround time for our students. So do know that when you upload your documentation and submit an application successfully, you will be able to track the due date on your application, and it is usually, unless there are issues or questions we have about the application, issued within 15 days. For those of you applying for the F1 visa, you will receive the form I-20. You'll see here on the left. Students who are receiving the I-20, the F1, they will receive this document electronically. So this will be uploaded to your iPortal account. It is very, very important, even though it's uploaded electronically, you still do need to download and print the document, because you yourself need to sign the document and bring the physical document to your visa appointment or for any travel. If you already have an F1 visa and you're not needing to apply for a visa, you still need the physical document to travel internationally. Okay, so make sure that you do print that when it's complete. For those of you applying for the J1, the J1 program is administered by a different branch of the government, the Department of State, and they are still requiring that students have a hard copy of their Form DS 2019. So when you apply for the document, we will ask you what your shipping preference is. You can select that, and then we'll send you the physical document again for you to sign and to take with you for your visa appointment and for any international travel into the United States. All right, so that's a brief overview. I do again encourage you to go to our inewstudent.ucsd.edu site, which goes into much more depth about the visa request process. But now I want to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Karina.
Thank you, Gabi. We also wanted to talk a little bit about ways to connect with UC San Diego community and different ways in which you can get involved on campus. So some of the things that ISPO offers, so on the screen, you'll see a few logos for some of our specialty programs, also known as I programs. And so English in Action is our English conversation program that partners up students with native speakers. to improve conversational skills, but as well as engage in cross-cultural experiences. It's a great opportunity, to kind of get connected from the get-go. We also offer international peer coaching program. So this program is designed for our first year undergraduate students, in which students in each college will be paired up with a mentor. And usually it's an international student who was also in their college during their time at UC San Diego. Coffee Hours is one of our most popular programs. It is an opportunity for students to connect with one another, as well as meet our team. So a lot of ISPO staff attend these events as well. We usually have really delicious coffee and pastries. There are games as well as giveaways. And so it's a nice opportunity to spend the morning together enjoying a cup of coffee. We also have iTable, which is our basic needs program. This program offers food security resources to students. Trident Trekkers is a partnership with UC San Diego Recreation. And this is where we take students on trips to explore greater San Diego area. So some of the trips that we've done in the past were hiking trips. We do snorkeling and kayaking pretty often as well. And so it's just a really nice way to see all of the beautiful spots in San Diego. ISAC, also known as our International Student Advisory Council, is a council composed of international undergraduate and graduate students, as well as cultural organizations that get together to discuss concerns that international students may experience. And this is an opportunity to connect with ISPO leadership and work on different initiatives to make things better. We also oftentimes host events by partnering with different UC San Diego organizations. The one that we've done recently was a Lunar New Year event, and it was a really big success. Our Intercultural Social Hour is a very relaxed event where students get to play games with one another. There's usually food, and those are hosted once a month by our international peer coaches. Last but not least is Community. This is one of our newer programs, and this is a space for students to talk about culture and identity with one another. We partner with different campus departments to bring different talks to students. If you're interested in learning more about any of the programs I've shared with you, please visit iprograms.ucsd.edu. This is one of our, again, main websites where you can find all of the ISPO's signature programs. Another place to stay connected with the campus community is our iEvents calendar, which can be found on ievents.ucsd.edu. And so this is where we will actually post the details for different events. As you can see, there's quite a few of our signature events, but also events hosted by other community members. So you can see, student organizations and clubs hosting events and adding them to iEvents calendar, or our campus partners at, let's say, iHouse. And so you can actually filter based on your interest. Sometimes we will even indicate if there's free food available. So it's a nice opportunity to get connected and explore your interest as well. We're also pretty active on social media, although I will say we're a bit more active on Instagram than we are on Facebook. But if you're interested in kind of staying in touch and checking out all of the different things that ISPO is doing, please follow us. Our Instagram handle is @ispo.ucsd. We also oftentimes do giveaways. So if you're interested in kind of getting a little prize or participating, following us on Instagram is a great opportunity to do that. Before we transition into questions and answers, we wanted to share some additional resources. If you'd like to stay updated and learn more about different campus policies as it relates to COVID-19, please visit the Return to Learn website, and you can find it by going to returntolearn.ucsd.edu. For some important deadlines, as Gabi mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can start requesting your visa documents via iPortal by going to iportal.ucsd.edu. And again, it has been open since March 1st, so you can do this now. Now is also a good time to start applying for on-campus housing with housing, dining, and hospitality. And their website is hdh.ucsd.edu. In a week, on March 14th, we're going to have another pre-arrival webinar that will go in more detail in terms of the process of how to apply for your US visa. If you'd like to register for this webinar, please go to inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. Summer of 2023 is when you want to make sure you have met all of the student health insurance and immunization requirements. And in September, this is where we're super excited to see you during our orientation sessions, both virtually and in person. We don't want to spoil any of the excitement for orientation just yet, but if you're curious to see what we have done in the past, please visit iorientation.ucsd.edu. And then lastly, we do have a lot more pre-arrival webinars coming. So usually they happen every week. And in addition to talking about US visas, we also have webinars that focus on health insurance, housing, funding, student life, and so much more. And as I mentioned earlier, inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu is your go-to for any registration information. And this is also where we're going to post all of our recordings once they are available. With that, I see we have quite a lot of questions, which is awesome. If you haven't had a chance to put in your question in the Q&A function, please do so now. And I'm going to open it up to Gabi and Shauna. It looks like we have a few questions that we would like to answer live.
Yes, thank you so much, Karina. Shauna, if you wouldn't mind, I can defer to you on some of the admissions related questions maybe first.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a question that says, I've already sent in the required documents to grad admissions. When will I get a revised final acceptance letter? So my understanding is we don't reissue an admission letter, but the portal would indicate that your admission has been finalized. So you would see that your status in the portal, application portal, has been updated. I'm realizing I'm using portal. I don't want to confuse it with the iPortal. This is the graduate applications system. You would see that everything's been finalized, but I don't believe we send another admission letter. Your admission letter that you have previously received should be that indication that you've been admitted. And then there was also a question about having paid their deposit but not receiving their official UCSD email ID. So I just want to say that it can take a couple of days for you to be able to set up your UCSD email address and password. That's totally normal. We ask for folks to wait at least 72 hours for this to come through and to be able to set up your email address and your password in your systems. But especially at really busy times, such as now, when there's a lot of new students that are coming through, it might take a little bit longer. So I'm just going to ask you to be patient with that one. I just want to mention briefly, there is also a question about logging in to the connect.grad.ucsd using the login and getting a temporary PIN. I'm not entirely sure what that is about, so I have actually started a chat with one of my admissions colleagues so I can get a little bit of information, and I'm hoping to touch upon that in a few minutes. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Shauna. We have quite a few questions regarding financial support for the iPortal, the I-20 and DS 2019 documents that I wanted to hopefully address as much as possible here. Some of the questions, a couple of them have to do with combinations of funding. So some of our students come with, maybe it's a combination of personal or family funds in addition to department funds, and are wondering if they can combine, if they can use both of those to show sufficient funding. Yes, absolutely. So your source of funding does not have to be from one source. It can be from a combination. As long as you upload all of that information to the iPortal, we can review it all together in one document, then that is totally fine. And another question about loans, I should say loans and then stocks and bonds, so certain types of funding. So I wanted to, and I'll put this in the chat here, this chart. On our website, we go over what is accepted, what isn't accepted for I-20 issuance. That hopefully gives you a good overview. But in general, if a student has a pre-approved loan or a conditional loan, conditional meaning you have to have the I-20 document in order to have the loan distributed to you, which we do see commonly from students. As long as that's made clear in your application that it is pre-approved, it's conditional upon receiving your I-20. If you can make that clear in your application, whether it's just typing up a quick statement to accompany your financial document, your loan document, that is totally fine. We can accept that. We can use that to issue your I-20. In terms of stocks, bonds, typically speaking, investments, typically speaking, we are not able to accept those, with the exception if there is documentation you can provide from your financial institution stating that the funds will become liquid, that is accessible by the time that you are going to start your program at UC San Diego, then we can accept it. But if it's just, stocks, bonds, property investments, things of that nature, so not liquid funds, unfortunately, we cannot accept that. I'm just going through here, making sure I have answered. There's one that's sort of connected, Shauna. I don't know if you might be able to comment on this. So one question is, does receiving your I-20 form depend on our WES evaluation submission for transcripts? And I just kind of wanted to get the order sort of explained a little bit, so maybe we can help our students understand that.
So I'm also checking on that one.
Okay. Okay.
So the WES, using WES services is new for us for fall 23. This is the first time that we have had this process built into the admissions the admissions timeline. So I'm actually not quite sure on that, but I am hoping to also get an answer soon.
And we're happy to provide that information. If you want to email inewstudent@ucsd.edu, we're happy to, we can clarify that information, also put some FAQs on our site, so that helps explain that a little bit more clearly. There is a question here, how can one become part of an ISPO program? Is there any application process, or are all welcome? I don't know, Karina, if you wanted to take this question.
Yeah, I would love to answer that. Thank you so much for asking this question. So our programs are open to UC San Diego community. You don't have to kind of apply for anything. Oftentimes we will post a registration link, and this is just to give us a sense of how many students are attending, so we can make sure we have enough food. But in general, if you hear about an event last minute and you would really love to attend, don't feel pressured to register. Please just come. We'll have a sign up kind of form right there and then you'll get to enjoy it, and we get to meet you as well. So yeah, don't ever hesitate to stop by, even if you haven't registered. I will say though, sorry, just to clarify, for some of these, there may be an application process. So if you're interested in English in Action program, for example, or we also have a few peer mentorship programs, those may require an application process. And it's just a form that will ask you about your email or your PID, your name, and things like that. But usually it will be really clear if you do need to apply in advance for those.
Thanks, Karina. And on a related note, someone asked when our orientation dates are. So they will be on our website soon. I can say they are mid-September. And do know for all of our students as well, we have made this program as flexible as possible for our students. That means a combination of online virtual sessions as well as in-person opportunities to engage and meet your fellow students so that everyone can be part of it. So do know that that's coming. It will be announced and in one of our newsletters soon.
Can I also add to that, Gabi? Similarly, for GEPA orientation activities, there is actually, before you arrive in San Diego, we do have online orientation modules that will be released this summer, again, before you arrive. And then we have some in-person events that we are planning for mid to late September. If you or any updates on GEPA orientation activities will be posted to our website. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well to add to ISPO's sites and their resources, and feel free to check back on this page as events are finalized. There's also a question I wanted to address, if you all don't mind. There was a question about when is the deadline for submitting decisions on the application? So if your admission decision comes with funding, if part of your admission includes funding as a teaching assistant or as a graduate student researcher or a fellowship that's coming from UC San Diego, then we ask you to make your decision by April 15th. If your admission does not come with funding, you don't have to adhere to the April 15th deadline. It's okay to take a little bit longer, but if you are somebody for whom funding has been extended to UC San Diego, we ask for all of those responses by April 15th, and this allows us to plan our funding needs for the following year. There's also a couple of questions that I've noticed about housing. Confirmation that you've applied for housing, checking the submitted application. Some of these questions, most of these questions will be addressed at the housing session that will be later in the pre-arrival webinar series. So please know that, and you can also reach out directly to Graduate and Family Housing as well, and they can give you a little more specific answer regarding when you're hoping to move in. We here today wouldn't be able to look up your application, so you might also want to reach out to them.
And Shauna, there was a question here just touching on some of the topics you were talking about previously. And one of them is one of the previous questions referenced a deposit. Please, can I ask what the deposit was referring to?
Only some programs require a deposit. So that's really program specific. I'm trying to think if I have a list, but basically, if your program is requiring a deposit, they would reach out directly to you. And if you are someone to whom your program has not said anything about a deposit, then I think it's safe to assume that they don't require it.
Mm-hmm. And I should say too, because part of the question too is it related to the I-20 or DS 2019? No, I mean, if there is a deposit that's required as part of accepting your admission to the program, I don't know the mechanics on that side, if that would delay your sort of formal admission to the university, I'm not sure, and then would delay systems access down the line. But in general, this has no impact on your I-20 or DS 2019. If you've accepted admission to the university after it's been offered to you, you formally accepted in your application, then at that point, you should have access to all of your systems and be able to access the iPortal to request your I-20 or DS 2019. I see we do
If
have
I can,
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Can I come back to the WES evaluation? So the first question was if WES or WES evaluation is pending, can we submit it later before the start of our classes? So yes, the information that I have says that incoming international graduate students should submit their WES evals before the start of the quarter. So that's pretty typical. That's a very typical time frame for any pending admissions documentation. We ask that you submit it before you arrive, but if you are not able to, then just plan to bring all your documentation with you when you come and submit it to graduate admissions at that time so that we can finalize your admission. So that WES evaluation should be submitted basically on that same time frame as any other pending admissions documentation like transcripts and test scores and all that kind of thing.
Thank you, Shauna. That's great clarification. I'm noticing a few more questions related to financial documents for the I-20 request. One of the questions is, do we have to show the exact I-20 amounts that's required, or do we have to show more than is required? You only have to show the minimum that's listed on our website. I'll go ahead for some of those students who might have joined us a little bit later. I'm going to pop in the chat the funding amounts that are required for an I-20 in DS 2019 for graduate level students. So you only need to show what is listed there. So for example, if you are a graduate student in a starting your graduate program, you need to show a minimum of $56,447 or the equivalent. So you don't need to show more than that. For F1 students, you need to show just that amount for the entire duration of your graduate program here, just that amount. For J1 students, it's a little bit more stringent. It's a little bit more strict because of the way the Department of State runs the J1 program. You need to show funding for the entire duration of your program. So if you're on a 5-year program, for example, you would take that $56,447 times 5 and need to show that full amount to get your J1 document. Typically for our J1 students, understandably, this is a stressful kind of bit of knowledge to come across, but typically if a J1 student is funded by their department, and if it says so in their offer letter that they expect to receive funding for a certain amount of time, we can accept that documentation. If it's up to a certain, few years into the future, we can accept that, but do know that. We also have a few questions. Oh, this is a good question, actually, especially for those students who might already hold an F1 visa from their old institution in the United States. Someone asks, so can we apply for a visa with an old I-20, so from your previous institution, and then get it updated later for funding? And then we update the I-20. So if you're coming to UC San Diego, you need to request a new I-20 document from us. It has to have UC San Diego's name on it. And then you can use that to apply either for a brand new visa, if your visa is expired and you need to travel, or if you have an existing F1 visa that is valid into the future, you can use that old visa, as long as it's valid, with your UC San Diego I-20. So it's just really critical. I want to make sure people know you can't use your old school's I-20. You do have to use UC San Diego's I-20. Just scanning through and seeing if we have any others. I know we do have a lot of questions about applying for TA-ships and GSRs. Again, we do have a webinar coming up in the coming weeks that covers graduate student funding and these specifics about TA-ships, GSRs, availability, how to apply, and so forth. So definitely recommend signing up for that webinar. Okay. One good question I meant to address a little bit earlier regarding, again, financial documents. The question is, do we need to convert the currency from your home currency to US dollars in the financial documentation? So the short answer is no. Students oftentimes will upload their documents with their home currency in it, and that's totally fine. We will do the conversion on our side. The requirement is, however, that the documentation is in English so that we know what amounts are being referred to, so that we can deduce from the document what funds are being shown. In addition, the iPortal will actually ask you when you go through, based on this documentation you're submitting, how much roughly is this in US dollars? So it will ask you to provide your best estimate of what it is in US dollars so that we have a guiding figure to go by. And then we'll check your documentation to make sure that's the case, but we can take care of the conversions in the actual documentation. Make sure we're getting to all of our questions. We have quite a few. One question, is there financial assistance for international students? So unfortunately, for international students outside of department funding, that is a TA-ship, if that's available, or a graduate student research position, if that's available, any kind of on-campus employment. Those sorts of employment opportunities may be available based on what your department has available or what you're able to find on campus. However, in addition to that, there is no additional financial assistance in terms of scholarships for international students, unfortunately, at this time. So that just to make that clear to students, when you are looking over your offer letters from your departments, make sure you have a good understanding of what funding you do and you don't have, so that you can budget accordingly.
Bobby, can I ask you to weigh in on a question? It says, my funding letter states that I am expected to establish California residency after the first year. What does this mean, and will I stop receiving funding if I decided not to? So that sentence is something that I am used to seeing in letters for students who are not international students. I see that more, or I've seen that for students who are, say, US citizens. So what would that mean for an international student?
Yeah, typically, so these questions having to do with residency, establishing it, and its impact on fees. Although we want to be able to weigh in on, we typically refer students to the registrar's office because we don't know exactly, based on the language or the letter that was provided, what that necessarily means for the student. So they are only able to advise on residency and what impact it may or may not have on fees. So we definitely recommend checking with the registrar's office.
And also probably their department, because it's possible their department has more information.
Correct. Yes, that's a good point. Maybe start with your graduate coordinator first, your department first, and they might be able to refer you to what that might mean. That's a good point.
Yeah, I agree. I think, yes, that order I think is good. There's a question, this is also a housing question, but it says, what is a typical move-in date for grads? So with graduate housing, when you submit your application, you indicate what move-in date you would like to have. So depending on when you are arriving in San Diego, then you'd want to match your move-in date to the extent that you can to when you will be arriving. And so for some students, that might be closer to the first day of classes, just depending on what's going on. Other folks might be coming a couple weeks earlier, or just depending on your situation. So, but I think what I want to really just be clear about is that you select the move-in date, or you would request a move-in date that works for your situation, and then housing takes that into account when they are making offers for housing. So we don't have a standard date, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Do we want to say anything about programs that might have summer start dates?
Yes,
There's a couple in here.
Some of these. I think some of I noticed one question about orientation and start dates. So for clarity on when to arrive for your summer start, I know Rady has early starts, or some of our MAS programs have early starts. You will be able to enter the country 30 days before that start date on your I-20. In terms of actual start date, determining when your orientation is for that particular program, please be in touch with your department to get that confirmed date. We are still getting information from some of our departments to relay to us exactly when those early start programs begin. Whatever they tell us, we will then put that on your I-20 document. And again, you will have 30 days prior to that date to enter the United States, secure housing, get settled, and so forth. So it gives you a little bit of time before then. But in terms of when you need to show up to campus and so forth, please work with your department directly on those dates. And I see a question here. Are there any significant differences in summer start programs versus regular fall start programs? It's hard for me to describe exactly what those differences necessarily would be, other than starting just sort of off the sort of standard fall start. In terms of services and support, for example, from ISPO, all of that is the same. You would just be starting your program a little bit earlier. The campus is a little bit more quiet in the summer, but there's still a lot going on, usually right into that fall quarter. But beyond that, in terms of support services and so forth, there's really no difference there for anyone starting in the summer versus regular fall start. A couple of questions about timeline for applying for TA or GA shifts. Again, those are going to be covered in an upcoming webinar about graduate funding. So look out for that coming soon. And in terms of how that impacts your I-20, some students are asking, what if I show a certain type of funding when I request my I-20, say personal funds, but then I get a TA ship, I get funding from my department down the line. That's okay. If you are eager to get your I-20 sooner rather than later, and understandably, because you want to book that visa appointment, and if you have the personal funds to be able to show you have funding for your program, go ahead and submit that request for the I-20. If at a later point you do receive a TA ship, some kind of employment, we can easily update your I-20 document for you. You just submit an amendment request through the iPortal, and we'll typically update it within 5 business days. It does not impact your visa. It does not impact your travel, those updates. So that's totally fine to change that after you get confirmation of your funding for the year.
I wanted to jump in here with another housing question. Somebody is asking about average on-campus housing per month. So the rental rates vary based on a couple of things. So there are some of our communities that are very much in demand, and they might have a slightly higher rental rate. But additionally, rates differ if you have, say, a studio versus a 1-bedroom apartment versus a larger apartment. So the best thing to do if you want to look up what some of the current rates are Keeping in mind, it's possible those might change later on. I'm going to put a link in the chat to the graduate and family housing communities. And it's best to click on the community you're interested in directly to see what they're currently charging for rent. I also want to touch upon a question that says, will summer start grads have a different orientation? Can they attend the fall orientation? I don't want to speak for my ISPO colleagues, but in regards to GEPA, or graduate education orientation events, we run our orientation or welcome activities only in September. So new students that come in the summer, or other students who maybe recently joined our community, they would be welcome to join us at our orientation events in September, or in person, I should say, in September. We don't differentiate, and I don't think you all either, but I just want to be clear that I'm speaking from the GEPA perspective, that yes, any of our new students would be welcome to attend our events.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Shauna, because we know we have a fair number of students who do start their programs early. And from ISPO's perspective as well, all of our students are welcome in our September orientations. In addition, we will be releasing the iTriton online orientation. This is required of all international students. It will become available closer to June, where you can start to actually go through a self-paced orientation program while you are here, before you are here, but also during those summer months while you're getting acclimated. So you can already get started on those orientation pieces while you are here, and then you're welcome to join us in September for the full kind of in-person orientation program once that begins. I do just want to do a time check. It's 9:28. We have 2 minutes left. So we tried to get to as many questions as possible. Maybe we can take a few more in the last minute, a minute and a half that we have here. We have a few more financial questions. If I'm receiving a fellowship from my department at UCSD, should I request the I-20? You actually have a choice. If you're receiving 50% or more of your funding from your department, you can apply for either the F1 or the J1. You have a choice. So the I-20 or the DS 2019. When you go to start your application in the iPortal, it will ask you what you prefer, and it will provide a link to a chart to help you decide. It lets you see side by side what the F1 visa benefits are versus the J1, so that you can make that decision, but you are eligible for either one. There is a question about CVIS transfers. So those of you who are in the United States, have a current F1 record, and want to release that record to UC San Diego to receive your I-20 from us. We actually don't have a release form or any kind of form on our end that you need to submit. But if your institution requires one, you can actually request that through the iPortal. We can sign off to say that, yes, we would accept your record. But typically, so what you would do is you would start the I-20 process just like any other student. When you indicate that you are a transfer student, it will give you specific instructions on how we can handle that transfer. All right, we are at time at 9:30, so I'll hand it back over to Karina just briefly here.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending our first pre-arrival webinar. Today we focused on some of the first steps that you need to complete as a new international graduate student here at UC San Diego. As we mentioned earlier, the recording of this webinar will be available on inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. We do ask that you give us about 2 weeks or so to get those ready for you, but they will be posted as soon as they're available. We have quite a lot of other pre-arrival webinars that are coming up in the upcoming weeks. As we pointed out with the questions and answers, it looks like there's a big interest in information about housing as well as TA-ships. So please make sure to sign up and register for those pre-arrival webinars to get more information. If you haven't had a chance to get your questions answered, please email inewstudent@ucsd.edu to connect with ISPO, and gradadmissions@ucsd.edu to connect with graduate admissions as well. Thank you all so much for being here with us, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.